We have Mike from Epson, and he's going to talk to us, as I mentioned before, a little about some of the trends that are happening within their business, some of the new products that they're bringing out, and how they're launching those products and how they're changing those.
So the slides didn't look quite like this when we looked at them earlier, so I apologise that they've cut the top and bottom off. So the top of this actually says, you see, but you don't observe. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote those words in a book, Sherlock Holmes novel called A Scandal in Bohemia. And what Holmes explained in that to Watson, he said, you see, but you don't observe. And Watson said, well, what do you mean? And Holmes says, how many times have you walked up the stairs to the apartment? And Watson says, well, hundreds. And Holmes says, so how many stairs are there? And Watson replies, well, I don't know. And Holmes says, there are 17. You see, but you don't observe. And we all do this every day. If I asked any of you now how many stairs there are in your house or your flat, unless of course you live on a ground floor, I'm sure that most of you would have no idea. You'd have no idea how many pumps there are at your local petrol station, how many tills there are at your local supermarket, or how many beer taps there are at your favourite pub. Because we don't take in that information, because it's seen as kind of extraneous to us. And we don't have the brain power to constantly be thinking and collating and counting all of these things. But what about if that information was gathered together and it was put with other information that we do find interesting, and it was collated and cross-referenced and analysed and presented in a way that was engaging? What about if it told you something? What about if it was interesting and relevant and useful to you? What about if it helped change your quality of life, gave you some insight into part of your life that let you make some changes that made you more contented or happier in some way? But why am I telling you this? Because at Epson, we believe we're on the cusp of a new era of computing. And it's a huge change that's gathering pace. And we think that at Epson, we are perfectly poised to take advantage of this. And that's what I'm going to kind of tell you about now. So I'm pretty sure that most of you will have heard of the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything, and Elaine's just touched on it now. But currently, less than 1% of all things in the physical world are connected. And currently, there are more, or in 2008 actually, there are more smart devices than people on the planet. And by 2050, it's predicted there'll be 50 billion smart devices. And that's about 6 per person. So that's a lot of smart devices, potentially all connected, potentially giving us huge amounts of information. But what is information? Or to put it another way, how much of the world's information is currently on the internet? Now, there are some huge areas here, and although we think we've got lots of information, actually it's a fraction of what we're going to have in the next 20 and 30 years' time. Because most of the information we collect currently is done by human beings. So the huge explosion we've seen through things like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter has huge amounts of information. A, they're done by humans, we can only do so much, and B, they're quite superficial. So a lot of this stuff is for entertainment or voyeuristic type purposes, and it's not hard data, and it's this kind of data explosion that's going to give us some of that. Because we believe that we're at the cusp of a data explosion that our business director, Paul Stills, refers to as the Cambrian Era of computing. And what he means by that, the Cambrian Era was an era in human life on Earth where there was an explosion of life. Suddenly we went from single-cell molecules to this huge explosion of life. And we think there's going to be a huge explosion in data, and that data explosion is to come things like recognition, facial recognition, temperature, depth, touch, positioning. Just like there's so much information that's suddenly going to become available to us. And all of that, because of these things I'm going to talk about, are going to be available. So as a human race, we've always known that data, or more importantly information, is going to be important. And we think there are 5 things that are going to be enablers to this change. The first one is big data, or the cloud. We've all heard of big data. It was a really big buzzword probably a year or 2 ago. And big data is really important. The ability to hold huge amounts of data relatively cheaply now and to have it accessible anywhere in the world across multiple devices is hugely important. But But as our VP of Marketing, Rob Clark, stated recently in his blog, it's not about the amount of data we've got, although it's important. It's about what you do with it. Now, there's probably a euphemism kind of joke in there somewhere, but it's about delivering meaningful insight. And that's what we need to be able to do. And that comes partly from the next part, which is data visualization. The ability to take that data, analyze it, put it in a form. So we've seen infographics that have become very popular over the last couple of years, but put it in a form that people understand, so they're able to use that information, and then they're able to do something with it that changes and impacts their life. There's also social media. Now, social media is huge. It taps into some really core things as human beings that we all, whether we want to admit to it or not, are doing every day. So whether it's voyeuristically looking at what people have been doing on Facebook with old school friends or work colleagues or stuff, stalking people on Facebook, whether you're bragging, whatever it might be, all of these things are really, social media gives people a platform to let people talk to each other, find groups that are interested in each other. So things like Strava, Map My Ride, Map My Run, all of these kind of things let people share information, and all of that data is then a common pool that we can all share and work with. And then we've got mobile apps and devices. So obviously this is about the ability to deliver that in real time to somebody that needs it right now. So Elaine mentioned, doctors sitting, operating in an operating theatre. All of that is driven by these things, the ability to have all of that data, be able to call on it at a certain point in time, and have the visualization of that data so it makes sense to them, so they can actually make a decision based on that action. And the final thing is sensing. So the ability to collect information with little or no human effort, things that we wouldn't normally collect. So, the amount of pumps at a petrol station, the temperature constantly at the end of my finger. I'm not going to know that, but if I've got a piece of sensing device that does it automatically, that data might at some point prove really useful to me. So sensing is going to provide huge amounts of information, and that's going to drive some really interesting stuff. And to give you an idea about how important it is, if I tell you there's a company that set up 4 years ago, they only make 2 products. One is a thermostat, and the other is a smoke alarm and carbon monoxide detector. And they were recently bought for £1.9 billion. I think you'd all probably know that I'm talking about Google and Nest. But that just shows you how important sensing is going to be, and how much of a massive change this, because a company so big as Google thinks this is going to be, and how important it's going to be in part of this infrastructure. So this is a quote from Dave Evans, who's the Chief Futurist Technologist at Cisco, who reckons that there'll be 95% of everything we know as a species will be discovered in the next 50 years. So it's not just Epson that are saying this, and we won't be playing alone in this space. Epson, Cisco, Nest, Twitter, Hitachi Data Systems, EMC, Google, there's huge amounts of companies that will be all looking at various parts of this kind of new era. So hopefully you're thinking, wow, that's great, that's really interesting. But you're also probably wondering what a brand like Epson is going to do in this space, because I imagine that most of you probably think that we're associated with printers and projectors. So our president, Mr. Yasui, has 4 key pillars for Epson. 2 of them are around printers and projectors, which is what you'd expect. 1 is about robotics, but the 4th one is about quality of life. And under quality of life, you have sensing. And we've recently launched 2 products in the sensing area. So we've got a load of watches called RunSense and some wristbands and activity monitors called PulseSense. And wearable tech has been the thing that everyone's been talking about recently, and I think a lot of people would think maybe that wearable tech is where it's at. And it does some really good stuff. In fact, Epson have got a really long history in this. We've been delivering heart rate monitors, accelerometers, inclinometers and GPS devices for many years. So we've got a lot of history here, but not many people kind of necessarily know about it. But these types of products, we're not the only people that do this, are starting to show us what can happen in those 5 areas. So we're able to take information. So the Epson product will let you track your run, your cadence, your stride rate. It will let you look at your heart rate. It will also let you look at your sleep patterns, and it will wake you up if you want to set the alarm at a certain point when your sleep is not really deep. So it tries to wake you up at a better time, which is better for you. So there's all this information that you can then choose to do something with. And that is where we're going to end up going. But this is just the start of it, because Wearable tech isn't really where it's at. It's the now, but it's definitely not the future, because wearable tech is just a holding device. It's just something that lets you do something else. In the same way as Revlon said, in the factory, we manufacture makeup, what we sell is hope. And Black & Decker said, in the factory we manufacture a 1/4-inch drill, but what we sell is a 1/4-inch hole. With Epson, yes, you buy a product and you buy a watch and you get that and you put it on and you wear it. What you're buying is the ability to have some data that tells you something about yourself that you can then use to improve your quality of life by making a change, by having a better sleeping pattern, or it might be that you want to run faster or further or cycle or whatever it might be, but it's data that lets you do something that you can then do something with. So I'd like to show you a really quick video. It's about 2 minutes because I can't do it justice in terms of you seeing it, but we've got a product called the BT200 Maverio glasses, of which these are them. And we've been working with Dr. Stephen Hicks at Oxford University, who's looking at a way of giving partially sighted people basically some level of vision. So I'm just going to...
We're going to show you what you can see with those glasses.
Yeah, look. There. Now, can we see you? There, look, see you are. You're in black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. If I look around, we can see the crew. Crew going to wave to us. There we are.
Hello, Tracy. Hello, Susan.
Well, you look amazing. Look at you. Don't you think?
I think I prefer your view of me like that.
I can't see it. Oh, yes. Wow.
Yeah.
So let's have a look. Oh, I can see your face. Your camera. So this is giving me more of a context about, I'm here in a corridor with a handful of people. There's other. I was wondering who those lovely ladies in the background were, but I think they're mannequins.
This video was captured live from the display of the glasses as a severely sight-impaired individual walked around a busy market in Oxford. The image is composed of a number of layers. Firstly, a depth camera is used to determine the position of objects to a range of about 3 meters. The edges of any surface within this distance are traced with a strong, bright outline to help separate them from other objects. Secondly, surfaces are shown in grayscale, becoming brighter the closer they are to the user. This helps indicate the presence of objects, in particular hazards such as walls and obstacles that might pose a collision risk. Thirdly, the RGB image from the camera undergoes an edge enhancement treatment to bring out specific details. The presentation of the edges is under the control of the depth camera, such that details are only shown on nearby objects. The combination of these 3 processes allows the wearer to concentrate their attention on nearby objects, such as people and obstacles, while avoiding the visual cluttering of the background scene. While the background in this video is black, it appears transparent on the user's see-through lens, allowing the person to use their remaining sight as usual.
Even since we've been down this corridor, it's improved. I can see you. So I'm just standing here talking and not thinking, I'm looking.
This system works because the majority of legally blind people have some remaining residual vision. This is often far too low to see details in everyday life, but is sufficient to see a bright, high-contrast display. This system excels at detecting and enhancing facial expressions and bodily movements and gestures, which is of particular importance to many blind individuals.
So that's just one of the projects that Epson are working on at the moment, and this is it's a massive difference. It's not about just a piece of information that lets me run faster. This is making a profound and really different, giving somebody a massive difference in their life in terms of what they can go and do. And this is happening now. So just think what we're going to be able to do in the future and how exciting that's going to be. So we've just seen what kind of the near future can be, and that's one thing in isolation. But what about if you thought about other things that might be happening? So Elaine talked about Google or driverless cars, which Google are doing. And in 2015, so only next year, there are 3 cities in the UK that are going to trial driverless cars. We've been signed up to do so. So if you're a registered blind person at the moment with some level of sight left, and you have a pair of these glasses and a driverless car, suddenly you've got a whole new world that's open to you. You can leave your house, you can walk out without any other aid, you can go to your car will then take you to wherever it is you need to go in the country. You could go on a ferry over to France or whatever it might be. But you could go to the pub and see your friends, you can go out to the restaurant, you can go to your place of work. You have so much more independence. And all of this is kind of going to be available pretty much next year. It's also making it, the other thing that's going to happen actually with that is that they're looking at putting mapping software in there as well. So that people will be able to, as they're walking around with those glasses on, they'll be able to map their environment. That information will then get collected and fed back, held in the cloud, and then you'll be able to build a virtual world so that the orientation will be quicker. So think about it like kind of Google Earth, but a much more granular level, and potentially it will be thousands or in eventually millions of people that will be mapping everything in a real-time basis. And that will all be stored in the cloud and called up. So all of this is going to be possible. The other thing that's happening, and this is happening now as well, is that Epson are working with government in Japan, and a lot of Japan's infrastructure was done in the 1950s and the late 1970s, which means it's getting quite old, and like any infrastructure, obviously it needs maintenance. And there are only so many people that can go and do that maintenance in terms of engineers and surveyors. So what they're doing is they're using our products at the moment to look at what's happening with those buildings, to look for certain signs that that there might be structural problems. And so rather than surveyors having to go out and spend time surveying all the buildings, the sensing products are doing it for them, which means that they can concentrate on stuff that's really important and necessary, bridges and buildings that need work. They're also using it to prevent natural disasters. So they have a big problem in terms of torrential downpours and typhoons causing landslides. And so by using accelerometers and inclinometers, we're able to basically understand what's happening with movement in areas that potentially are susceptible to landslides. So it has a huge impact in terms of people's lives. There's also stuff where it's kind of more to do with the individual. So, we've talked about the Internet of Everything. We can see a time in the not too distant future where, because everything is connected, you might have a meeting, but the roads are really icy. So the information from the weather comes up, it's linked to your calendar, knows you've got a 9 o'clock meeting, but the roads are icy and there's a bit of trouble on the motorway you're going to have to use. So it wakes you up slightly early, and it puts your coffee on for you, and it does a million other things. It sets the thermostat in your house and puts your heating on early, and all of those things to make your life a little bit easier so you don't miss your meeting you'd have missed otherwise. Now that's really trivial compared to everything else, but this is the sort of thing that is going to happen in the not too distant future. There's also implications for things like, socially there's implications. So with sensing for sound, we can imagine a position where there's a gunshot, and because of the sound sensors that are in place, they're able to triangulate. A, they're able to notice it's a gunshot. B, they're then able to triangulate that sound to pinpoint where it came from because of the distance it took to get to the different sensing devices. And from that, they're able to then alert a member of the police, who then is able to look for another sensing device to see what's happening in that location. It gets sent to their device, whether it's a smartphone or any other sort of device. They're able to then react to that and call for backup and whatever else they need to do in real time based on information that the sensing is providing them. So all of this is kind of going to be, some of this is available now or is coming to be available, but it's where the future's at. And we think that it's about capturing information in the world in an unobtrusive way and providing that back to individuals based on their needs so they can make a positive choice about their life, which will make their quality of life be improved. So at Epson, we see the world as one in which you will continue to see your world in your way, and we'll observe it for you. And then we'll provide that information to you in a meaningful way that will improve your quality of life. Thank you very much.